it is a real struggle for teachers to understand the role of structure and support. And in a second language in particular, these are two key words, I think, in planning and in classroom layout and in actual instruction. What do structure and support mean to you?
I think too often we think because we're teachers, and like I am a teacher, therefore I tend to think as a teacher, and I think sometimes that's not necessarily beneficial to our students, because if I'm thinking as a teacher, then it's always going to be teacher-centered. So if I want to change that, I need to think about what I might need as a student. So if I were a student in a classroom, what would I like to see? So thinking back to my own days as a language student, or thinking about language classrooms that I've seen, or different things that I've read, I know that support doesn't mean the teacher telling me the response. Support means having enough dictionaries in the class so the kids can find their own answers. Support means giving them language ladders on the walls so that they can find their own answers. Support means developing a good basis of vocabulary so that they can express what they mean, even if it's disjointed or jumbled or barely comprehensible. It still means giving them opportunities to go get information and then bring it and use it. But it's not necessarily them asking me what a word means, because they know I won't tell them. There's a dictionary, and this way they can scaffold their own information and they can learn at their own pace to a certain extent. If we're talking about expressing our emotions, and I say, okay, today we're going to, I give them a little sheet at the beginning of the semester that says je me sens, and we practice the reflexive verb I feel. So they would have different emotions, but I would only give them, there's a grid and there's little happy faces, je me sens, and they have to figure out what the adjective they would use that would go with the happy faces. There's that for about a third. Then the next third is they get an adjective, and they have to draw a picture that they would associate with the adjective to help them remember what it means. And the last part is that they would have to do both using their own adjectives. So they will develop a more meaningful vocabulary if they can access their own support rather than me telling them what they need to know. So in terms of support, I think it can be teacher-based, and I mean, the kids come in before school, at lunch, after school if they need extra help, and they know that help is there. During activities, it can mean that there are more, if we're doing a form and they have to do an oral presentation, it means that perhaps I'm giving them a little bit more information because I know that it's difficult for them and they might need a little bit more help. So that would be support, but it doesn't have to be teacher support, and it doesn't have to be direct support. Structure, I think in itself, is probably one of the most important things that teachers can either do very well or very poorly. I think if you set a set of expectations for yourself and a set of expectations for your students for a semester or for a class or for a program, it doesn't mean that those expectations can't change if you realize that you made a mistake or that the kids need something a little bit more. But the kids need to feel that they're in an environment where there are constants and there are variables. And if you don't create this is the classroom expectation. We are going to speak French in this classroom, and that's the way it is. If you don't allow yourself to break from that structure, then the kids will follow it as well, right? Like, I mean, you model, you lead by example, and so they would follow it as well. In activities, we know that language learners, second language learners, sometimes they have trouble if they're being asked to be too creative because their language doesn't allow them to do so. So I think high school kids want to say so much, but they try to translate directly from English to French, and they don't understand that they can't translate directly from their level of English to the level of French that they know, because it's too much of a shift for them. So they would have to have, if we were doing a presentation, they would have to have enough structure to know where to go, but also enough freedom to know that if they deviated from the structure, but they were still working their French and that sort of thing, then that would be acceptable. So really it's creating a framework for yourself when you plan your lessons, for your kids and your expectations of their work in class, so that everybody can move at a reasonable pace and learn the most, but in a safer environment. So when you combine the sense of structure and support, really it's giving kids enough so that they feel they can accomplish something, but not so much that they feel it's easy, and giving less and less and less when you feel that you can push them more and more and more to become better at what they do in class.